Mr. Peterson sat in the grand office of his art gallery, surveying his collection with an air of self-assured superiority. His gallery, one of the most prestigious in the city, boasted some of the finest pieces ever created, artworks from world-renowned masters, each priced in the millions. To Mr. Peterson, art was a measure of status, a display of taste that only the most refined and elite could truly appreciate. He prided himself on being a gatekeeper of culture, dismissing anything that didn't fit his narrow definition of true art. He was a man of wealth, power, and influence, and he carried himself with a sense of entitlement that made it clear he believed there was no artwork worthy of his attention unless it came with an esteemed pedigree. The Black Artist's Arrival. On a crisp autumn morning, a young man named Elijah walked into Mr. Peterson's gallery. Elijah was a humble, aspiring black artist whose work spoke more to the raw emotions of the human experience than to any formal art traditions. He was dressed modestly, his clothes worn from long days spent at his studio, mixing paint and sketching inspiration from the world around him. Despite his modest appearance, Elijah carried within him an immense talent that had begun to turn heads in underground art circles. But here, in Mr. Peterson's hallowed gallery, he was an unknown. Clutching his latest painting under his arm, a vibrant, colorful depiction of a cityscape infused with a sense of hope and struggle, Elijah stepped into the bright, pristine space, feeling both out of place and full of purpose. He wasn't seeking fame or fortune, he simply wanted to share his vision with others, to make people feel what he felt when he painted. Mr. Peterson's Mockery. As Elijah walked into the main gallery hall, Mr. Peterson noticed him immediately. With a dismissive glance, he raised an eyebrow and turned to one of his regular patrons, a wealthy collector, as if to announce the arrival of someone unworthy of attention. "Ah, another aspiring artist," Mr. Peterson muttered, half laughing. He walked over to Elijah with a thinly veiled smirk on his face. "Let me guess, you're here to try and sell your work?" Elijah, although taken aback by the cold reception, nodded and presented his painting. "Yes, sir. I believe it may be a good fit for your collection." Mr. Peterson glanced at the canvas, his eyes narrowing as he took in the colors and the style. His lips curled into a condescending smile. "This," he scoffed, his voice carrying in the gallery. "This is no masterpiece. This looks like something a child could do on a weekend. You don't understand art. You're clearly a novice. Perhaps you should take your work somewhere less serious." With a flourish, he gestured to his prestigious patrons, who were now watching Elijah with curious amusement. "Art, my dear boy, isn't about colorful splotches and misguided emotions. It's about precision, technique, refinement. You have neither." Elijah stood frozen, the sting of Mr. Peterson's words cutting deeper than he had anticipated. The other patrons exchanged glances, their polite smiles concealing the judgment they shared. Mr. Peterson's laughter echoed through the space, and Elijah felt every ounce of his being crumble under the weight of that moment. But Elijah's resolve remained unbroken. He had heard worse in his life. From the rejection he faced growing up to the struggles he encountered as a self-taught artist, he had learned to ignore the mockery of others. Though he was hurt by the public ridicule, he knew that true art could never be confined by someone's narrow view. As he left the gallery, clutching his painting tightly, he didn't know that the mockery he had just endured was the beginning of something that would ultimately change not only his life, but the world's understanding of what real art could be. Elijah walked out of Mr. Peterson's gallery, his heart heavy with the sting of the mockery he had endured. The crisp autumn air outside felt colder than it should, as if the world itself had conspired to reject him. For a moment, he stood still, his fingers brushing the edges of the painting that had been so cruelly dismissed. But despite the humiliation, something within him refused to surrender. He had spent countless hours on this canvas, on every brushstroke, every vibrant color, every inch of emotion woven into the cityscape. His art was more than just paint on canvas, it was an expression of everything he had lived, loved, and dreamed. No matter what Mr. Peterson or anyone else thought, he knew his art had value. He couldn't let their closed minds define him or his work. With a deep breath, Elijah steadied himself. He would continue to paint. He would continue to pour his soul into his art, because he knew it had meaning. The rejection from the gallery didn't matter, it was just a moment in a much larger journey. And this journey was far from over. Elijah's success unseen. Days passed, and Elijah's resolve only strengthened. He returned to his studio, working tirelessly on new pieces. His paintings, vibrant with life and emotion, began to quietly catch the attention of a few key figures in the art world. Unknown to Mr. Peterson, Elijah's work was gaining traction outside of the elite circles he frequented. A well-known art critic, who had recently stumbled upon one of Elijah's pieces in a small, local gallery, was the first to publicly praise his work. The critic spoke of Elijah's unique ability to capture the struggles and triumphs of everyday people, using colors that resonated deeply with the soul. Word of the young artist's brilliance spread quickly among art collectors who were eager to discover new and groundbreaking talents. At first, it was subtle, a mention in an art blog here, a brief feature in a regional gallery there. But soon, Elijah's paintings were being displayed in respected art shows and garnering attention from influential figures who recognized his unorthodox style and raw emotion. What had once been dismissed as unrefined was now considered revolutionary. Elijah remained in the background, refusing to reveal his identity. He preferred to let the art speak for itself. His paintings were beginning to transform into something much bigger than just his own dreams. They were touching the hearts of people from all walks of life, giving them something they hadn't realized they needed. A secret buyer. Amid the growing buzz, a mysterious figure appeared in the art world, an anonymous, but highly influential art collector. This buyer, known only through their discreet dealings, had a reputation for quietly acquiring pieces from emerging artists whose work carried immense potential. One by one, the collector began purchasing Elijah's paintings at skyrocketing prices. But despite the skyrocketing fame of the artist's work, no one knew the identity of the buyer. The paintings were sold through private auctions, bypassing the public eye, and were quickly absorbed into private collections. The art world buzzed with speculation about who the elusive buyer might be, but no one had an answer. The buyer's actions remained shrouded in mystery, and their interest in Elijah's work only added to the allure and intrigue surrounding the artist. Elijah, who remained blissfully unaware of the true extent of his success, continued painting in the quiet of his studio. As he worked, the prices of his paintings grew higher, and the whispers of his rising star grew louder. His humble beginnings as a struggling artist, with no recognition or validation from the prestigious galleries, seemed a distant memory as his art transformed into one of the most sought-after commodities in the world. With each sale, Elijah's paintings crossed borders, reaching collectors and patrons from all over the world. The vibrant cityscapes and emotional portraits that had once been ridiculed by Mr. Peterson now graced the walls of some of the wealthiest homes and institutions. And still, the identity of the artist remained a secret. Elijah's art had found its place in the world, his true worth finally recognized. But the journey was only beginning, and the greatest twist of all had yet to come. Mr. Peterson was in the midst of orchestrating his most prestigious event yet, a highly exclusive art auction. His gallery had become a cornerstone of the city's art scene, known for its refined collection of world-class masterpieces. But now, he wanted to take things a step further, to showcase his gallery's exclusivity and power by bringing in rare, priceless works of art to the auction. The invitations were sent to the most elite collectors and artists from around the world, promising an unforgettable evening of high-end art transactions. Mr. Peterson's ego swelled with excitement at the thought of the prestigious event, convinced that it would reaffirm his position as a leading figure in the art world. For him, this auction was the perfect stage to demonstrate the dominance of his gallery and his refined taste. But what Mr. Peterson didn't know was that this auction would turn out to be one of the most humbling experiences of his life. Unexpected bidder. As the night of the auction arrived, the room was filled with well-dressed art collectors and enthusiasts, sipping champagne and discussing the finer points of the paintings on display. The auctioneer opened the event with an air of sophistication, presenting each piece with an authoritative flourish. The first few paintings, works from established artists, mostly safe investments, sold quickly, their prices climbing higher with each successful bid. But as the auction moved forward, a peculiar thing happened. An unexpected bidder, someone whose identity had not been revealed, appeared in the back of the room. The newcomer seemed to be an enigma, neither known to the gallery staff nor recognized by any of the patrons. They bid with remarkable confidence, placing high bids on several pieces that had previously been dismissed as too common or unrefined. At first, Mr. Peterson barely took notice. But as the bids continued, a clear pattern began to emerge. The anonymous bidder was purchasing paintings that had been overlooked, undervalued works that the other collectors had deemed insignificant. To Mr. Peterson's shock, the bidder was willing to pay extraordinary sums for these unpolished pieces. The most surprising part? These were the very paintings Mr. Peterson had dismissed months earlier, Elijah's paintings. Realization. As the auction progressed, the bids grew larger and more intense. The mysterious bidder didn't just stop at one or two of Elijah's paintings, they purchased nearly every piece that had once been ridiculed by Mr. Peterson and his peers. Each bid was higher than the last, and soon, the gallery was buzzing with excitement. But it wasn't until the final lot was brought up, Elijah's masterpiece of the cityscape, that Mr. Peterson felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. He had recognized that specific painting earlier in the auction, and it had haunted him ever since. As the auctioneer introduced the lot, Mr. Peterson's eyes widened in disbelief when the bidder raised their paddle once again. Going once, the auctioneer called out, going twice. 3 million, the anonymous bidder said, raising their paddle confidently. The price was astronomical, far more than Mr. Peterson had ever imagined for a painting that he had dismissed as worthless. The room fell silent. Everyone knew that the sale of this painting was the climax of the evening. It wasn't just a sale, it was the moment the art world had been waiting for. As the bidder stood up to claim the painting, something clicked in Mr. Peterson's mind. He saw the silhouette of the person now approaching the front to finalize the sale. He could feel his heart racing as the realization dawned on him. The bidder wasn't just a wealthy collector. It was Elijah. Mr. Peterson's face went pale as the art world's hottest new star stood before him, ready to collect the very paintings he had mocked and rejected months earlier. Elijah, once the humble artist dismissed by Mr. Peterson, was now a millionaire. His artwork had skyrocketed in value, and the gallery owner was helpless to stop it. The irony of it all hit Mr. Peterson with the force of a thunderclap. His arrogance and dismissive attitude had cost him dearly. The man he had humiliated was now in a position of immense power, having turned the tables on the very system that had rejected him. Elijah, as if aware of the magnitude of the moment, met Mr. Peterson's gaze. A quiet but powerful smile crossed his face, not one of revenge, but of quiet satisfaction. It was clear that this wasn't about proving Mr. Peterson wrong. It was about something deeper. Elijah had always known his worth, and now the world would see it too. As the final bids were tallied and the paintings were transferred to their new owner, the room buzzed with whispered excitement. Mr. Peterson, now a spectator in his own gallery, realized too late that in trying to control the art world, he had overlooked the one artist whose work would change everything. Before Elijah became the artist that the world now admired, he was a boy born in the small coastal town of Seabrook, where the rhythm of the waves dictated life's pace. His father, Solomon, was a fisherman, strong, weathered by the sea, and unpretentious. Every day, from sunrise to sunset, he would set sail in his modest boat, bringing in the day's catch. Despite their modest means, the family was rich in love and community. Elijah's mother, Sarah, was a woman of grace and strength. She had grown up as the daughter of a fisherman herself, and though the world around her often seemed unforgiving, she maintained an unwavering belief in the importance of kindness and integrity. Though their home was small and their lives simple, Elijah's parents filled their home with warmth, wisdom, and an appreciation for the beauty of life in its purest, most authentic form. From a young age, Elijah was taught that success wasn't about money or recognition, it was about the love you gave, the effort you put into your work, and the way you treated others. His mother often told him stories of how the kindness of strangers had helped her family when times were hard. Kindness, Elijah, she would say, is the truest form of wealth. never forget that. Elijah, with his paintbrush in hand, would spend hours sketching the landscape, his heart always filled with the sights, sounds, and colors of the sea. His father would often catch him painting, and instead of scolding him for not helping on the boat, he'd smile and say, "The sea may provide the fish, but the world needs your art, too." These words stayed with Elijah as he grew older, and though he dreamed of something beyond the shores of Seabrook, he never lost sight of the humble lessons instilled in him. The daughter's act of kindness. One fateful day, when Elijah was in his early 20s, he went down to the shore to sketch the setting sun. The waves were rough that day, and the air was thick with the scent of salt and seaweed. As he sat on the rocky beach, he noticed something out of place, a figure struggling in the water. A man, in a panic, was thrashing about in the waves, unable to make it back to the safety of the shore. Without hesitation, Elijah rushed into the churning waters. The man was in a state of shock, barely able to stay afloat. Elijah managed to grab hold of him and pull him toward the shore, using all his strength to keep both of them above the water. The waves pushed against them, but Elijah fought against the current, determined to save the stranger. After what felt like an eternity, they finally reached the shore, both gasping for breath. Elijah helped the man to his feet, his heart still racing from the rescue. He had no idea who this man was, only that he was grateful to be alive. The man thanked Elijah profusely, but Elijah, ever humble, simply smiled and said, "I'm just glad I could help." With a final handshake, the stranger staggered off, leaving Elijah to return to his sketching. Little did Elijah know, the man he had just saved was not a mere tourist but a wealthy businessman, a reclusive art collector known for his vast holdings in contemporary art. He had been traveling to the town for a retreat when the accident occurred. This stranger would later become a crucial figure in Elijah's rise to fame, though neither of them knew it at the time. The role of his mother. Elijah's mother, Sarah, had always taught him that no act of kindness, no matter how small, went unnoticed. As Elijah grew older and began to gain more recognition for his paintings, he often thought back to his mother's words. Her influence was a steady presence in his life, even though she had passed away when Elijah was still a young man. Before her death, Sarah had told him, "Elijah, never let the world's cruelty change who you are. Stay humble, stay kind, and never forget where you came from. It's the heart, not the hand, that creates true art." As Elijah's art began to gain recognition and his name started to spread, he made a point to honor her teachings. He continued to live simply, never allowing the wealth and fame that came with his success to overshadow the humility that had been so deeply ingrained in him. When the wealthy art collector, the man he had saved that day, purchased his works and propelled him into the international art scene, Elijah remained grounded. He knew that the kindness he had shown to that stranger had not only saved a life, it had set in motion the chain of events that would change his own life forever. The art collector, unaware of the personal connection between him and Elijah, would later tell friends, "I owe my fortune to the kindness of a stranger." The words seemed prophetic, as Elijah's work continued to rise in value, fueled by the kindness he had shown, the lessons of his mother, and the serendipitous encounter on that fateful day by the sea. Through it all, Elijah remembered his roots, the humble upbringing by the sea, the wisdom of his mother, and the importance of treating others with respect and kindness. In an art world that often valued exclusivity, wealth, and status, Elijah remained an anomaly, a living testament to the power of love, humility, and the transformative effect of kindness. The days following the auction were filled with whispers and rumors. The art world was buzzing with talk of Elijah's newfound success and the mysterious bidder who had turned out to be the artist himself. For Mr. Peterson, it was a time of reckoning. The reality of what had happened sank in with every passing hour. He had mocked Elijah, rejected his art, and thought he could control the fate of the artist's career. But now, the tables had turned. He spent hours in his gallery, staring at the very paintings he had once scoffed at, now displayed under the spotlight of a new, breathtaking legacy. The room that once felt like his domain now felt foreign to him, as though the power had shifted away from him and into the hands of someone far more deserving. Mr. Peterson had built his empire on elitism and exclusion, but it was Elijah's talent, raw, unrefined, and pure, that had won the admiration of the world. Sitting in his office, Mr. Peterson realized that the true value of art wasn't found in the price tags or the status it afforded the owner. It wasn't about the exclusivity of a gallery or the prominence of its patrons. Art, true art, was about the emotion it evoked, the message it carried, and the human experience it represented. And Elijah's art, though dismissed by Mr. Peterson in the past, had done all of that and more. A new partnership. One evening, as the gallery buzzed with visitors, Mr. Peterson received an unexpected message. It was from Elijah. The message was brief but powerful: "I would like to meet." When they finally met face to face, Elijah did not come with anger or resentment. Instead, he came with an open heart, one that was willing to forgive and to offer a second chance. "You've been through your share of struggles, Mr. Peterson," Elijah said, looking him in the eye. "But I think you're ready to see art for what it truly is. It's not about status or wealth, it's about the heart, the message, and the connection it creates between people." Mr. Peterson was taken aback by Elijah's words. In that moment, he knew he had been given a rare opportunity to grow, to change, and to be a better person. Elijah, in his quiet wisdom, had extended an olive branch, offering a partnership that would help Mr. Peterson rebuild his reputation and contribute to the art world in a way he had never considered. "I'd like to work with you, Mr. Peterson," Elijah continued. "Let's create something that changes the way people view art. Let's make it about the people, not the price tags. Let's give artists, real artists, a place to thrive." For the first time in years, Mr. Peterson felt a sense of purpose beyond the accumulation of wealth. He agreed to Elijah's offer, not because it was a business opportunity, but because it was a chance to redeem himself. He would use his gallery's resources to support and uplift artists like Elijah, helping them find their place in the world without the constraints of elitism and exclusivity. Closing hope. The gallery that once stood as a fortress of high society and exclusive art collectors was transformed. Under Elijah's influence, Mr. Peterson began to curate exhibits that celebrated diversity, raw emotion, and the stories of everyday people. Art became a platform for expression, a space where artists of all backgrounds could share their work without fear of judgment. The partnership between Mr. Peterson and Elijah became a beacon of hope for the art world. It was a reminder that redemption was possible, that even the most prideful and arrogant could change if they were willing to open their hearts to growth and understanding. As time went on, the world began to recognize Elijah not just as an artist, but as a symbol of resilience, humility, and kindness. His paintings continued to inspire millions, and his story became a legend of triumph over adversity. But Elijah, ever humble, continued to create not for fame or fortune, but because he believed in the power of art to heal, to connect, and to inspire hope. The art world, once defined by its exclusivity, now stood united in the belief that true beauty was found in the stories we shared, the struggles we overcame, and the kindness we showed one another. Elijah had not only changed the art world, he had changed the hearts of those who had once overlooked him, proving that even in a world driven by status and wealth, there was always room for redemption, and for hope.